go through a quick couple of tests, make sure that the streaming is working at all the campuses and available for everybody. So bear with us for about 30 seconds. Okay, good morning, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our second annual Incubation Forum here at the beautiful Dubai Expo grounds, the Dubai Exhibition Center. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everybody to this event, a very unique HCT event. We are live streaming to all of our campuses and quite frankly around the world. We've got a lot of uptake from our global partners. They're quite interested in what HCT is up to in this space. My name is Alex Zahavich. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the Higher Colleges of Technology. And I'd like to thank our Incubation Forum organizing team, Dalal, Kim, Dr. Khaled, Nicola, and Tamara. We pulled it off again. We'll see what the ratings look like when we're done this thing. But it's no small event to put together. Just a couple quick checks. Obviously, we have our COVID measures in place that we will be following. The exits and entries to the room are well marked, and the facilities are available nearby. We do have water available for people, so please take advantage of the hospitality that's given to you here today. So, what is incubation? As I said earlier, it's a unique HCT activity and event. And I have to give credit to our President, CEO, Dr. Abdulatif Al-Shamsi, Professor Al-Shamsi, for putting together two words that basically say everything about HCT these days. HCT is living in a hybrid world. We deliver our courses on campus and online. We do our assessments on campus. We do our labs online. We do our labs on campus. We have taken advantage of this very unique situation in the last 2 years to probably accelerate and in our own way disrupt education. Well, in the innovation space, it's no different. We have ideas that are generated, solutions that have to be converted into reality. And the way that's accomplished is by giving those things, those opportunities, a chance to be incubated. You have to test them out. You have to prototype them. You have to give them a chance to be tested before they're incorporated and become mainstream. And it doesn't mean everything becomes commercialized. There's process improvements, all those types of things that require a certain amount of time called incubation time. And so HCT has put together this combined word of innovation and incubation and mashed it together, to use a very common term these days. And we've come up with this forum to demonstrate how HCT is participating in this hybrid space of innovation and incubation. So this forum is comprised of 2 days here in the space of applied research and innovation areas of focus. This morning we'll be starting off with the health sciences. This afternoon we'll have education. Tomorrow we'll be back here for sustainability and then emerging technologies. Then we'll take a break and be back here on Thursday for our pitch day. And if it's anything like it was last year, it's going to be a very exciting time where, again, startup companies, student startup companies at HCT will have their chance to pitch to investors. Last year, I think it was at least a half dozen of those pitches resulted in funding coming from angel investors here in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I'm excited to see what will transpire this week because I think we're getting a little bit better, a little more mature in our presentations, and there's nothing like a good hungry student to make a pitch for 100,000 dirhams to get their company rolling. So that's the roster for this week. Now, the way we structured things is we're going to be having panel discussions in the 4 main areas of innovation and applied research. But before that, I want to highlight a couple of examples of where HCT applied research teams are focusing their activities to give the world an idea as to what HCT is up to in this area. And so, in order to determine what you're going to focus on, you have to identify what the challenges are. In the UAE, we have about 143 hospitals, maybe about 5,000 clinical areas, primary care clinics. They all need to be staffed. They all need to be staffed with skilled workers. HCT participated with this country in developing modes of operation for the education sector. Not a small feat when you think about it. Our applied research in that area early on, hard to believe it's going on 2 years when we did this in April, May, June of 2020, of creating modes of operation for the campuses that was then adopted by the Ministry of Education. Similarly, we played around in the healthcare space. And one of those things quietly emerged was in the detection of COVID with dogs. And in particular, using dogs and their sniffing capability, which we all know is quite effective in airports, to detect whether there was COVID presence. And one of our researchers here today, Dr. Mohammed Haj Ali, worked on that project with the civil defense authorities. And it did get reported and presented in Nature, a very successful project, very applied project in the health sciences area. We also had work done as we try to build our inventory of graduates for what's going to be a very highly sought after, high in demand job sector in health sciences. It's projected by next 3 to 5 years, the UAE is going to require 8,000 new graduates in the sector of health sciences. The goal is to increase the population death rate, age rate, I guess you'd call it, from about 78, 79 up to 82. And that requires a whole different mindset in terms of healthcare facilities and healthcare professionals. So one of the things that we did at HCT, and led by Dr. Raisha, who's our Vice President Academic Affairs, is we looked at the knowledges, the attitudes, and the practices related to people with disabilities. And that's a key component of an aging population. Trust me, I know with knees like mine, it won't be long before I'll be one of those people with a disability. And you have to have a certain mindset. But this isn't just about that. I mean, we have the determined ones. We have mental anxiety. COVID, the pandemic, presented a whole scenario for that. And so HCT led research in that area. And a final example is in the area of technology. HCT, the T stands for technology. where we did work with virtual reality and robot assistance for autistic children. A fantastic piece of work done by Professor Fadi Abdulhamara, and that's going to lead to greater integration of autistic children into society. It wasn't long ago that they were cast-offs. That sounds harsh, but that was how society treated things a few decades ago. But now we're integrating more and more people with disabilities, autistic children, into mainstream society. And the work that was done in this area will help that. So that's a lead into our health sciences panel. Shows where HCT is part of the incubation space in the health sciences sector. And with that, I'd like to introduce our moderator, who is going to take over the rest of today's session, Dr. Marco, to join me up here and bring our panelists. Thank you so much, and enjoy the session. No, we got 4 microphones.
So can you hear me well? Thank you. So, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, welcome to the second or 2022 edition of the Incubation Forum. This is the event where we would work discussing what are the new developments in the health sector, and a little bit later today in the education sector as well. So this is where we would start discussing how and in which extent health sector is changing, improving, evolving, becoming totally different than it used to be before. So I have an excellent group of panelists which would join me here on the stage, and I would introduce them briefly. I'm facing some technical issues, so just give me a second, sorry, to get there. So, first of all, one of the key characteristics of the fourth industrial revolution is the extensive impact of innovation and new technologies in all of the areas of our life. The health sector is one of the best examples about it. Regardless of if we speak about medicine, emergencies, information systems, pharmacy, it's almost impossible to imagine it without automation, data sciences, artificial intelligence, mechatronics, engineering. So, reflecting on that, I have a pleasure to host following panelists, which would try to give us a little bit more of ideas where and how health sector would evolve. Our first panelist is Dr. Rahul Goyal, Senior Vice President of Clinical Engagement Malafi and Consultant Family Medicine, Adjunct Clinical Assistant Professor at Mohammed bin Rashid University of Medical Sciences. Dr. Rahul, please, would you like to join me? So Dr. Goyal joined Malafi as Senior Vice President of Clinical Engagement in September 2020, and before that he worked for Mediclinic as de facto as CMIO and was involved in various digital transformation projects leading the physical-focused adaptation of aspects of systems such as electronic health records and other synergistics technologies. He continues to practice as consultant family medicine as a part-time engagement. With almost 20 years of experience in family medicine as a UK-trained physician, Dr. Goyal worked as a partner in various UK practices before joining Mediclinic. Before completing his training in family medicine, he was trained as a higher specialist ophthalmologist. Dr. Goyal was also elected as one of the future 50 clinical leaders in healthcare IT, and he is a member of the Royal College of General Practitioners and the Royal College of Ophthalmologists in the UK. In 2020, he was appointed as an adjunct clinical assistant professor at Mohammed bin Rashid University in Dubai, UAE. So thank you for joining us today. Our second panelist is Ms. Hodan Al-Sheikh. Ms. Hodan, welcome. Ms. Hodan is a certified EFQM Senior Excellence Assessor, working as a Head of Excellence and Innovation at Danat Al Emirat Hospital under Mubadala Health. She is auditor and specialist in strategic planning. Her aim is to achieve organizational excellence with a focus on patient safety, and this drives her to research and work on integrating the organizational system to balance the operational inputs and outcomes of care in an innovative approach. Ms. Hodan possesses Master of Science in Community Medicine, in Hospitals Management and Healthcare Management, and she is a lead auditor of the Quality Management in Environmental, Occupational Health and Safety. So thank you for joining us. Our third panelist is Dr. Eric Curnief, Director of Research and Innovation in Pure Health. Dr. Eric. So Dr. Eric is a global healthcare executive with 25 years of international management experience in growing healthcare economies. He is currently the Director of Research and Innovation with Pure Health, the largest integrating healthcare platform in the United Arab Emirates. Previously, Eric has held multiple senior roles in the healthcare industry, including the Health and Information Quality Authority of Ireland, the Abu Dhabi Department of Health, the Abu Dhabi Health Information Exchange, the UAE Ministry of Presidential Affairs, and Truant Health Analytics and IBM Watson Health. Eric has served as an expert advisor for a variety of international organizations such as the Council of Europe, European Partnership for Supervisory Organizations, and the Institute of Healthcare Improvement. Eric holds PhD in Health Policy and Management, Erasmus University of Rotterdam. He also holds Master of Science in Health Service Management from Trinity College Dublin, and Master of Science in Educational Sciences from Radboud University in Nijmegen, also in Netherlands. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Alik. Next panelist is Dr. Osama Al-Hassan, Health Information Specialist from Dubai Health Authority. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Osama. Dr. Osama is the Vice President of the UAE Health Informatics Society as a co-founder of and coordinator of the GCC Task Force on Workforce Development in Digital Healthcare. He is an elected member of several regional and international boards, such as the International Society for Telemedicine and e-Health for the Middle East and North Africa, Health Informatics Society, and roster of healthcare IT experts at World Health Organization. He contributes to academia through his adjunct lecturer role at the higher colleges of technology, and also serves as a health informatics specialist at Dubai Health Authority. Dr. Al-Hassan obtained PhD in software engineering from University of Leicester and Master of Science in Advanced Computing from Imperial College in the UK. Throughout his 15 years journey in the digital health domain, Dr. Al-Hassan gained profound experience in fields of health informatics, e-health, workforce development, health information governance, and telehealth. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Hassan. And last but not least, Dr. Mohammed Haj Ali, academic advisor to the HT President and CEO. Welcome, Dr. Mohammed. So Dr. Haj Ali is a former executive dean of the HT Faculty of Health Sciences. He holds PhD from the George Washington University in immunopathology of infectious disease and research fellowship in medicine of the Harvard Medical School in immunology and molecular biology. Previously, he worked at the Institute of Applied Technology and Fatma College of Health Sciences as Health Sciences Advisor and Head of Academic Affairs, and as a consultant of the Preventive Medicine, Public Health, and the Pathology and Laboratory Medicine departments at Medical Services Corps at Zayed Military Hospital. Before moving to UAE, he was engaged as a chair of the Genetics, Molecular Biology, and Immunogenetics Division and Organ Transplantation Laboratory in King Fahd National Guard Hospital in Riyadh, and director of the Medical Research Council at the Institute of Tropical Medicine Research at the Michigan State University Laboratory for Infectious Disease Research. So, Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Mohammed. I'm really pleased to start this discussion and to try to get from our panelists some thoughts about the future of health sector, especially with a special focus on innovation. And I would like to ask you also to join us with some questions, if you would have, when we close the main part of our panel. So, I would start from something which is quite generic, but I suppose that it will be very interesting for all of us. As disciplinary boundaries are fading in all of the sectors, how do you expect that the health sector in particular will evolve in the next 5 to 10 years? So let's go this way. I would ask Dr. Hajali to begin with discussion.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for the nice introduction. I would start with where Dr. Alex left when he introduced the today's session, which is talking about the challenges and the direction of healthcare, where the emphasis will be in the future. He mentioned something about increasing the life expectancy from 78, 79 to 81 or something like that, in that neighborhood. And most of the research now is also going beyond that, increasing the age expectancy far beyond that. This is an area of research called longevity, research on longevity. Rather than working on the chromosomes and the telomeres at the tip of the chromosomes, people are working on the epigenome. How would modifications in the epigene, not the gene itself, we cannot change the gene, but we can modify and play with the epigenome, the things that controls the expression of the gene. That way, people will live, what we say, we have coined the phrase for that, how would we live younger, longer, living younger, longer. And that is expected to bring about 30 years to life expectancy. Not 1 and 2 years every decade, but about 30 years. Soon we'll be hearing about retirement age in the area of at age 90. And then somebody will be functional at age 120 as well. So this is an important area of research, looking at the epigenome and working with the epigenome, things that can be inherited from parents to their siblings, something that we can do to attain by 2071, in 50 years, a population in the UAE that is less likely to develop chronic diseases, things like diabetes and obesity, because the epigenome that affects the development of these diseases will be modified in that way. So this is one direction where healthcare will be moving in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. I can even build on what you've said. I think just to empower epigenetic, say, based improvement of health, that won't happen without having some sort of complete patient experience, 360 patient experience, and 360-degree monitoring of the patient or the consumer behavior, taking all those elements of their activities, their diets, whatever, and complement them with the genetic information, and that will give some sort of a daily recipes for patients to improve their health on daily basis. Also, we see that also now there's a very big trend happening in the market, trying to think about new types of hospitals. So moving from normal hospital setup to what we call hospital without walls. So even pushing most of care processes outside of the hospital walls. And now we are talking about trends like home hospitalization. Even if someone does an operation or whatever, he doesn't need to stay 10 or 15 days afterwards in the hospital. Actually, now we are pushing all those elements, all those monitoring, or even your interaction with doctors will be at home. So this will be a very big trend. Another trend now is also utilization of AI, and this will even go one level up by having those advanced type of sensors. And I've seen now, even now, some companies are coming up with contactless sensor. Even from videos, you can detect blood pressure or heart rate or ECG, even without having something that is attached to your body. So this will be opening a lot of opportunities for research and for well-being of consumers. So now we are moving from sick care to having taking care of your health will be kind of a daily basis. You will have a lot of information around you to support you in terms of awareness, in terms of making the right decision day by day. This will be the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me here today. I think it's a very good start that we are all on the same message, that the trend of the healthcare is changing. From a provider perspective, in the past 5 to 10 years, before we go to the coming 5 to 10 years, main challenges that we were encountering is access to care. I think with what Dr. Osama have mentioned just now, access to care is not going to be one of our challenges or main challenges or top priority to work on in the next 5 to 10 years. Also looking at the consumer behavior. And in healthcare, usually people are not looking forward, taking risks to go for technology. That's a challenge that they are facing from both sides. Is the customer going to and accept care being provided for them without coming to the hospital? And is the care provider ready also for the new care model that is forcing them to utilize technologies to diagnose and assist the patients further? So, and in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the model of care is going to change. The care plans, guidelines that we are following is going to change definitely. I see also opportunities in our portfolios of innovation, enhancing with accepting more risk and in adapting technologies for the diagnostic and also for automation the processes in the hospital. And I think one of the funniest challenges we always discuss with the management is introducing new positions in the hospital. It's not going to be a nurse, a doctor, biomedical engineer. We are seeing digital transformation specialists joining us and people who are specialized in AI, data analysts in a very high level. And I think all these positions will add value to the care model that healthcare providers are going to introduce.
Thank you so much. Dr. Rahul.
Thank you. It gets incrementally more difficult to add anything to what all's been said. So I'll bring a perspective from the bridge that I sit on, from a practicing clinician to the technology, boys and girls, and to the academics that I'm attached with. So often at times we see that as the boundaries get fuzzier, as we say, healthcare, technology, data science will sort of become fuzzier even more. And we will have specialities and specialists who would have exposure to a bit of everything, which would be able to cross-pollinate. We will even have, hopefully, within the curricula, with the nursing and the physician's curriculum, introduction to technology to understand what is informatics. Why does coding help you? So that when they are sort of released from their education and they come and practice as clinicians, it doesn't come as a shock to their systems. And they're more aligned to transformation. And transformation happens without much resistance, which is what we see a lot when we try and go to the clinicians and say, guess what, guys, we're going to make your workflow a bit easier. And then you see people throwing things at you, because the first thing that they don't want to accept is change. I think by having change as part of your curriculum, you mitigate that resistance. So I think in the future, I have a very strong belief that the boundaries between IT, healthcare will become even more fuzzier, and a lot of exposure to our next generation of docs, nurses, allied sciences, allied health professionals will have exposure to everything, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I think just to correct you a little bit on your question, I think because you talked about evolution, I think those times are gone from a healthcare point of view. I think we've been, having been in healthcare for a long time, I think what we've seen every 5 years, 10 years, is kind of incremental change. And now with COVID, I think it's really given us and patients an opportunity to kind of look at it from a different perspective. And I would use the term revolution almost, like disrupting it I echo what Dr. Mohammed said earlier about looking at, okay, what's healthcare all about? It's all about providing people, giving people the chance to live longer, healthier, happier lives, and using modern technology like nanotechnology or like genomics or biosensors, or using the skills and the opportunities that we've had so far and applying that in the best possible way. And I think what COVID has shown us in the positive side of that is that people understand that this is actually possible. The art of the possible is here now. And we've had investment in data infrastructure like Malafi, but as a provider, for example, we've also had investment in changing our model of care quite drastically within a couple of weeks, sometimes a matter of days. Like when you look at the field hospitals, for example, that were set up in the UAE, or the drive-thrus we've never seen before. So what then happens then is, from a customer point of view, you're all customers as well, it makes us so accustomed to new technology, new innovation, quicker, faster, more reliable interventions that we can all benefit from. And I think that revolution will hopefully continue. But I would call it a revolution because I think 5 years, 10 years from now, we'll look at healthcare in a very different way. More consumer-focused and more technology-enabled, as well as what my previous speaker said as well, looking at from physicians, clinicians' point of view in a very different way to what we're seeing at now. And that's a very exciting journey to be on, I think.
Thank you very much. Keep your microphone there. So let's continue with the next question, which will be more focused on organizational issues. So COVID-19 pandemic has emphasized the need to become more preemptive and more agile in responding to health-related challenges. And you just mentioned something about this when you mentioned those field hospitals which have been installed in just a few days. So how do you think, all of you, that education, profession, and policymakers can collaborate to ensure that we will be ready for the next global or local health challenges or crisis?
Okay, yeah, I'll continue on the same version really, or the same journey. The idea would be, from my point of view, is that it's always about persons, right? It's always about people in healthcare when it comes to healthcare. And healthcare, unlike other industries, it's quite, in a way, it's inefficient. It's not as effective as it could be. But that's coming back to the early discussion about what we want to get out of healthcare, which is again is living longer, happier, healthier lives, and being this whole aim of longevity. So when you look at healthcare, then specifically, only if you look at determinants of life or how long you will live, it's only determined by about 15 to 20% of what healthcare you receive. The rest is more about your lifestyle, it's about the environment you live in, or your genomics that you have, your genes that you have. So what we need to kind of focus in on as policymakers, educators, people working in the field, is to kind of work on how can we make that step from a healthcare point of view to kind of influence that whole debate and influence all the other factors that influence our health and our well-being in a kind of a way that collaborates with each other. And I think physicians, nurses, admins, allied health, we all have a duty to play that role and to be proactive about it and to push ourselves forward to the new version of healthcare.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rahul.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Eric. So yes, we have had a lot of our strengths and weaknesses exposed during the pandemic, I would say. The strengths came in form of the agility which we moved, the centers, the outreach that we did, the digital platforms, things like Malafi, which helped the clinicians understand COVID status of a patient, vaccination status of a patient when they needed it, removing a lot of blind spots from that journey. But the weaknesses we identified were there as well, like the validity and the veracity of the data. Now, structured data is useful, tangible, and an asset. Unstructured data can at times become noise. And to try and filter that is almost rewriting the book. So I believe our efforts will be consolidated at refining the data at the source rather than second working it later. It would also mean, again, educating our data inputters in healthcare the importance of structured data. to have it more universally accepted. I know the Department of Health and the MOH have already embarked on a journey where they would like to have structured data like SNOMED rolled out everywhere. The importance of that would be downstream when public health policymakers would be able to, at a click of a button, look at dashboards and say, I have data that is valid, I have data that is true, and I can see that there are pockets of health needs in here and there, and I can focus my energy. That helps you to keep your resources going for longer, and hopefully the health outcomes will improve. So in summary, I would say the strengths are we have some platforms, we have the intent to do good, and the weaknesses to make sure that the building blocks of these platforms are structured. So this is where I see the next revolution, Eric called it. The next revolution will be a data-driven society, a data-driven healthcare. The impact of that would be phenomenally more than what we can even imagine yet. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hudan.
I think COVID showed us that our steps to innovate in healthcare were really shy. We were very slow, and I think at some point we didn't have the confidence to invest. And most of the projects that were going in the pipeline, taking forever, not considered a top priority, moved quite fast during COVID. But the answer for this question to me is our ecosystem. Our ecosystem previously was just the healthcare providers, the payers, the patients, the regulators. And at some point, and from my experience in Abu Dhabi, we had an introduction for few accelerators to the innovation. And some companies that are leading innovation, partnering with all of us and bringing us together to reform the ecosystem. And one of the key successful examples was Alliance Force to Fight COVID in Abu Dhabi, in which representatives were from the regulator side. We had sessions that we can discuss challenges on the policies and procedures that restricts using diagnostic tests or some technologies in the healthcare system. And also having the startup companies having pitched all the time. And I was personally introduced to 15 companies, at least 3 of them focused on solving a challenge. So we had also the chance for exchanging ideas and co-creating by partnering with each other. And payers also were there to make sure that when we are investing, there is a little bit collaboration between us to make sure the sustainability of this. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this main change in how we are looking at the healthcare system in Abu Dhabi was supported by having the ecosystem revised for us. And regularly we are able to meet now at least once a quarter or once a month. And we are able to meet also and through our sessions, workshops, students who are always giving us great ideas about how to solve a challenge, bearing in mind that they are always having the fresh blood and fresh ideas coming. So I think this is one of the positive experiences that COVID have brought in the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have heard from the practice point of view that there is no health system without a comprehensive ecosystem. So let's hear now a little bit from another pairs of eyes from the policymakers and educators. So Dr. Osama, your perspective, please.
Thank you very much. I think COVID was really give us very good insights about what we need to do, what kind of changes we need to have in our ecosystem. So I believe to achieve the agility that you are trying to talk about, I think we need to have agility at the workforce level, at the organization level, and also at the ecosystem level. So from talking about the workforce level, starting from education. So we need to come up now with new curriculums, new outputs coming from the healthcare, from the education system that can really support the healthcare, both from the healthcare side. So even doctors of today, they need to learn technology, how to use AI tools, whatever. This should be part of their curriculum. Also, we need to leverage a lot the digital health education in our healthcare system. If I compare UAE, for example, with Saudi in terms of how many programs they have for digital health, for health information management. Like in Saudi, I know that there are 8 programs, whether undergraduate or master, only for health informatics. In UAE, we don't have a single one. So this is becoming a big issue. Yes, HCT is being working hard around the health information management courses, and they're really helpful. But still, we need to go one step further to be able to have data scientists who are experts in healthcare. We need to have people who can develop systems and integrate systems, and these kind of talents are not easy to build. I believe also within the organization, I believe if we want to have agility to be able to open hospitals in 24 hours. Now we are learning new terms like having digital health informatics as a service. So you have teams, what we call it, Gartner, they call them infusion teams. You have teams that maybe a handful of people who are clinical, biomedical, IT, change management, they work together. We don't think that it will be IT department, biomedical department. This will not work. So we need to have small, agile teams who can really develop projects, maybe in days, not in months or weeks. Yeah. But we need to change the mentality. The other part was also the ecosystem change. Even, I'm talking about DHA, Department of Health, Saha. Now we have to move and shift from the old mentality by, we have this big project, this strategic project, we need to get one of big fours as the consultants, one of the big fours as the integrators, and run it. We see now that innovation comes from startups, for small companies who are really, they are hungry to do things, new things. So we need to create an ecosystem for them. We need to support them. We need to accept their failures. So we need to create this kind of digital marketplace. So Nabit, Malafi, they could be the cornerstone of building kind of a sandbox for those small companies who can jumpstart rather than building things from scratch. So I think this is very important. So agile ecosystem, agile organization, and agile workforce.
Thank you very much. And I suppose that this means much more co-action between all of those participants within the ecosystem, right? Dr. Mohammed.
Thank you again. Again, I will just build upon what my colleagues have said. The importance of integration, working in teams. We no longer look at the disease. We are not treating a disease. We are treating a patient who has a disease. This is one. And we work with the team, with the patient, not as individuals, but as a team. Because this will give the patient a better chance of being assessed holistically from different angles, and then taking care of everything that might not appear on the surface as contributing to the disease. This is one. Ms. Hudan said something about the innovation being quite shy when we were faced with the COVID. I will go even further than that to say when the COVID struck, we felt overwhelmed because we were not prepared. And that alerted us to think again, how would we become prepared? The better the option to cross-train. Not all the functions in the hospital were needed at the time of the COVID. So people had to shift some personnel from one department to another. That requires us to think ahead of time in cross-training, more than one discipline, so that we can move people at the time of need. This is one. Two, technology is moving very fast, and the integration is moving faster than the discoveries in medicine itself. The technology, the IT, AI, all of these are quite ahead of our discoveries. And unless we depend on them, unless we get exposed to them, our students would be able to innovate, to thinking out of the box if they get early exposure to the health system. We shouldn't wait until year 3 or 4 in college to send our students to interact in the health field. So this is important. Integration also comes to, we spoke about longevity. How do you live longer, younger, longer? This is again something that has to be built in our way of life, in our lifestyle. It's not medications that we take day and morning or evening. It is a way of life that has to be integrated in our campuses, in our homes, in our schools. And this is the only insurance that we will change our inside. And that's why we will change the motto of you better take your food as your medicine before you take your medicine as your food. This will prepare us on an individual basis for the life to come. Thank you.
Can I just add one more question on your back regarding what Dr. Osama mentioned? How do you think that we can intervene to adapt our study programs in order to respond to the expectations of the changes at the health sector?
Again, thank you very much. This is again a matter of integration. I wouldn't go to giving a course in big data management or a course in AI. I would rather integrate those in the very courses that the student is taking. So if they're taking a course in physiology, the change from physiology to pathology requires lots of technology to detect that change. That's when the student will get exposed to the technology that can support detecting and looking at that change. So again, it is integration within our curricula rather than standalone bits and pieces.
Thank you very much. And this is one of the intentions of our new strategic plan to work much more on interdisciplinarity when it comes to study programs at HCT, because this is really something where all of the disciplines are going, not only the health sector. Thank you very much. And my third question is now focused on applied research. So on the areas where you see that research would emerge in a period to come. So what are those emerging applied research areas you can foresee to get into the most of the focus in years to come? Dr. Mohammed.
Okay, again, thank you very much. This gives me the chance to speak a little bit about the project that Dr. Alex talked about, which is on the sniffing dogs. Sniffing dogs were doing their work in the customs department at the airport, detecting whether it is narcotics or explosives or whatever. Those dogs, we were able to train them to recognize the COVID odor. Then they were able to imprint this in their memory. So whenever they saw anything that carried, actually the samples we used were armpit sweat on a piece of gauze. Just by smelling this, they can tell you whether that's a carrier of COVID virus or not. And they are not biased, by the way. The dogs are not biased. So that's why in the study, the conclusion was the armpit sweat sample was more sensitive than RT-PCR in detecting of COVID carriers. For a very technical, small technical reason, we employed dogs that are trained on explosives rather than narcotics, because we don't want the dogs to deviate in case they come across a suspicious case. So dogs are an important tool, and that's, Ms. Huzan, this is one of the innovations in diagnostics. The dog has a biological nose. We hope to imitate the dog's nose with an electronic nose that can detect COVID rather than PCR that looks at the genome. Well, I'm a molecular biologist myself. I'm not against molecular biology, but you can detect the DNA sequence or RNA sequence even in a dead virus or bacteria. But you cannot detect the smell coming out from that because it interacts with the body. So innovation can still be there. We need to think of ways of thinking out of the box again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, it's a matter of time as well. It's a prompt diagnosis, or not. It doesn't need some hours to analyze. Yeah? Amazing, Dr. Osama.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm taking it from different angle, more on the digital health. So if you see for the last maybe 6 or 7 years, the proliferation of the AI, usage of AI in healthcare specifically, and even in different angles of domains. So we see that I can say that 90% of the work that we've seen in AI was only in one area of AI, which is machine learning. I can say 90%. However, there are some areas in AI now they are just starting to pick up, and they have promises even more than machine learning. For one reason, that these kind of technologies, I can name one of them, could be the cognitive AI. So cognitive AI is more in depth, but more importantly, it is explainable AI. So even if they come up with an insight or a diagnostic or whatever, they can provide you with the evidence that how they reached this. This is one of the core issues that machine learning is not very successful in, because yes, it can give you prediction or a diagnosis or whatever, but if you look for an evidence for that, it will be really difficult. It's just a black box AI. So I believe that the cognitive AI will have a huge future in healthcare. Also, as I can add to that, NLP, natural language processing. And by combining both, even that you will find a lot of, I can say, possibilities around mental health. For example, this is an area that needs a lot of innovation. So mental health, diagnosis, especially for very rare diseases. Those two technologies will really be will gain a lot of attention, especially with the fast development with monitoring and the tools that support monitoring. So watch cognitive health and natural language processing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hudan.
I think I like the concept of electronic nose. I came across, just to continue on the same discoveries that we had. One of the startups introduced to us electronic ear, if I have to put in the same context. And we had a challenge for the pediatric patients to differentiate the cough that's associated with COVID and the cough that's chronic cough. Kids are usually having it. And after 2 weeks of searching everywhere how we can do the pathway in the hospital to make these two populations don't come in the same place, we found one of the startups introduced this concept to us, and we were not even, it was not targeted. We were not looking for the concept. So it's quite good to know that diagnostic can enhance not only in the decision making, and that helps us as a care providers to sort out how we are going to design the flow of the patients to avoid more infections to come. So I think we have a lot of amazing things to see. But when we go back to the research areas, I think data always guides us. Me and Dr. Rahul will always click on the point of structured and unstructured data. When we look at the healthcare priorities that we need to focus on, invest more effort, we talk to the regulators, what are the pain points that the community is raising out, and what are the data that we are having in the hospital. So 3 areas appeared actually and were common: chronic diseases management, mental health, precision medicine. Definitely these 3 are the top in most of the providers that we are exchanging information with. And we are looking forward a way that Malafi maybe can help us reorganize our health information system to produce predictive models that makes us move from treating to preventive medicine. We all look for the same goal. I think most of the regulators want well-being for the community, healthy lifestyle from the individuals. Nobody's looking for the sickness. So the focus should be preventive medicine. And the only way we can go to preventive medicine is to look back at the data that we are having. To share one example quickly, we conducted a hackathon. And the hackathon was based on 5 years data for one of the areas that we thought we are not going to solve. Yet we found a predictive model or algorithms that tells us exactly what are the risk factors that we need to pick up in the first trimester of pregnancy, or maybe retrospectively look at the genetics and quality of life for the individuals. So I have to say that we have an amazing 5 to 10 years to come.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahul.
Thank you, Dr. Osama. You've left very less for me to say from AI and machine learning, and I'm a complete convert to the value add that it brings to our clinical workflows. So predictive analytics, I think, is the next frontier where I can see what could go wrong with my patient in my workflow rather than having to go to a portal, do a calculation, or do a risk adjustment. So Huda will be glad to hear. Yes, Malafi is going to help you with that. Because of the data that we sit on, we are able to do predictive models through AI and machine learning, We are doing models where we can look at retrospective data and say, how long would this patient be staying in a hospital, for example, for a planned, let me say, a gallbladder operation. Now that this person is got a chronic kidney disease, he's also got a bit of diabetes, the chance of him overstaying for 2 days is higher than a person who doesn't have those two elements. So going away from a revenue cycle or finance-driven length of stay to a clinical length of stay. And that is the power of structured data that we keep banging on about. And I think the next frontier would be to try and get that data smoothly and more painlessly than what we are doing now when we are pushing our clinicians to go to that box and this box to put structured data in. How can NLP layer over our documentation and become our digital scribe so that no data is missed, nothing is left behind, and at the same time, I'm still adding that human touch to my patient. So, and this is where I start with my 30 seconds of caution with technology. So when I'm sitting in my patient in my room, I can use technology as a tool, or our technology can become a hurdle. One of the main complaints patients have is, well, you know that doc, he spent more time looking at the computer than speaking with me. FaceTime is so important. Looking out of my window, why do we have an expo? Why didn't we just send a PDF document for each country to Dubai? The reason is humans crave interaction. And that's where the word of caution comes in. Technology, research, and technology enhancements. At least in my consulting room and in every other doctor or a nurse speaking for the client, should be invisible. It should be a tool that is used. How that tool works in the background is the AI, the ML, and the magic that happens in the background. And I think the research should increase that human interaction, the human touch, rather than alienating the human element from the consulting room. So a word of caution and a word of hope from AI, ML, and NLP technologies to go the next step, make our data cleaner, harness that information in my workflow, whilst maintaining the face time with our patients and staying human in that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Eric?
Yeah, to Dr. Rahul's point, I think what's pretty common now is the concept of the patient will see you now. So patients will interact a lot more with their, with things like Google, not always supportive to you as a physician, I'm sure. But it's helpful in a way that it communicates a message to patients. They have access to information very directly and very engagingly, especially when it comes to COVID. They've seen lots of examples. But then as a provider, for example, as Pure Health, one of the probably one of the largest integrated healthcare providers in the region, what we're very conscious of is then what do we do with our clinicians? How does that help them? So to your point, Dr. Rahul, about not spending too much time on systems and not overburdening our clinicians, I think technology can really help, but we also have to be cautious about that. I think when I look at startups and applied researchers, and they come to us and they say, oh, we've got a great idea, I always say, well, this is fantastic, because the healthcare industry is so rich of challenges. I don't call them problems anymore, I call them challenges, right? So for example, when you look at clinical practice alone, I think it's still suboptimal. Still a lot of the patient engagement that physicians have, and there's lots of studies done, doesn't matter whether it's chronic patients or whether it's acute patients, it's quite suboptimal. There's not an awful lot of pathways that are integrated, that flow very well. So there's suboptimal care delivered. And that's where I think innovation or applied research could come into play. Then also there's a lot of healthcare that's not really necessary or wasteful, and sometimes even dangerous. And that's kind of where we're at as an industry. And as an industry, it's up to us to kind of think, how can we work together? This is going back to your early question, Marco, about where can we work together between all the players and all the whole ecosystem to work out these bigger problems. And then obviously now with COVID, the one good thing that we've seen through COVID is we've got lots of examples that we know kind of worked. Some of them didn't work, some of them did work. But compared to pre-COVID days, you would always struggle convincing the system to accept something that's new, that's innovative, whether it's be employing dogs. We've heard about that. That's quite well known in terms as a concept for the last couple of decades. But we've seen the same with pop-up hospitals or hospital in the cloud concept. They were all concepts before. Now, and this is where applied research, I think, plays a fundamental role, is how can you apply the research methodologies and the research rigor that we have collectively, and that's where higher quality technology plays a really important role to facilitate that. And where, as Pure Health, we're quite happy that we have such a network and so much capacity in this country to engage with us, to kind of say, well, let's make sure we find there's problems galore or challenges, there's plenty of challenges, but how can we help you as a community to kind of engage with us to say, well, how can we implement this in the best possible way using applied research and conducting that in a professional way.
Thank you so much. We've heard so many things from you during this panel. We are all aware that we have to work together, definitely, that things can't be developed in silos, that the way how world is changing really guides us to much more collaboration, co-design, co-implementation in all of the sectors. We are aware that we are in times where some breakthroughs are coming at this applicable side, definitely, and that's a lot of things which used to be concepts are becoming true reality. I would like to hear from our audience if you would like, any one of you would like to ask any question to our esteemed panelists. Dr. Phil.
Thank you, everyone. Morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Fascinating. My name's Phil Quirk. I'm the Executive Dean of Education, waiting for the next panel session. But our program is focused on early childhood. And I'm fascinated about what each of you would think. What is the best way in which the health and education sectors can combine, work together on early childhood care, development and education? Because we no longer talk about early childhood education. It is the CDE, the care, development and education. In many areas, that primary health care for the child seems to be kind of starts with the health sector and moves over to the education. But I feel so many children are lost. And I'm wondering what you guys see is the future of early child care, development and education, and how the two sectors working together can potentially improve the opportunities to capture every child in need.
Who would like to answer to this question? Dr. Rahul.
Thank you for the question. It's something close to my heart as a primary care physician, and I think this is an important element of how we can harness. I can probably talk more about the primary care aspect than the education aspect of it. So in the UK, we embarked on something called a virtual Red Book. So Red Book in the UK is a sum total of a child's milestones, how they grow, the vaccinations they've had, any health issues that they had whilst they were born and later on in life. How we can bring that to the fore so that you can identify children who would need extra help right from the start to their care team. Identifying those, putting support in place for parents and family, for children who have those elements, so that no child is left behind. There's also elements of, there are some programs in the NHS which is get it right first time. Things which emphasize that it is important to know the gaps and the needs in the community, early childhood being as one of the more important aspects. It is also one of the most important aspects of marker for healthcare maturity in a system. So it is important for us to identify by having the right, again banging on about data, sorry if I sound like a salesman for data here, but going back to the right data to be displayed in the right fashion within the workflows for the clinicians who can then identify, because as you can see now, we are talking about a domino effect. Getting the info, putting in front of the clinicians, making sure that that is acted on, and then having measures and KPIs to loop back. So this is where I see the power of technology can enhance early childhood recognition of issues and focusing care.
Thank you very much. We have time for a few more questions. Dr. Aisha, I think, was...
Sorry, can I just
That's it,
follow up?
please.
That's exactly it. I'm kind of thinking what Hodan was saying earlier about the ecosystem, because what you describe is brilliant, but it stays within the health sector. It doesn't move into the education sector. So we end up then with a prime early childhood education, schools, nurseries, KGs, who are not getting that information. And that seems to me the area where we should be working together. The ecosystem, maybe. I don't know.
It's exactly the ecosystem. I think at some point we realized that we have to work with the continuous education model for our staff. And I think the doctors have already touched on this. But also we are having education and programs for the students from different areas to come to the hospital. While they are doing their trainings, we share with them our strategic priorities from the start. We share with them the top areas, like for example, if they are assigned to the diagnostic areas or to the nursing care plan, or even they are physicians and we are working on a residency program. This is where we exchange ideas. They are part of our ecosystem. They sit in our committees. So I think this is maturing up to the limit that we are trusting diversity within the hospital and within the healthcare provider. And yes, I always agree. I focus on the system perspective of it. But recently we had one of the students who came up with a brilliant idea saying, children don't like the medications. So the design of changing some of the medications to medicated lollipops appeared, candies, and also we started thinking of having in the pharmacy preparation area for different sorts of medications so kids start having them and accept them. We hosted at least 50 students from 7 years old to 10 years old, just to listen to their dreams about their future as a part of our Future Foresight program. And I personally have a huge passion for children. I have 3, all of them are below 6 years old. Most of the creative programs came from talking to my children. How do you see yourself a doctor? Do you want to treat with this or you want to treat with another perspective? And healthcare and education were always hand in hand for the community. And I believe, yes, it's the ecosystem that answers how we can work together to educate the individuals and educate the care providers.
Dr. Osama would like to add something.
Yeah, I just want to add, maybe the only challenge is how to integrate these ideas to the ecosystem. And I believe that technology can help with that. So I mentioned earlier about the digital marketplace, where it could be a place which is developed by the regulators, by DOH or DHA, that provides these data and those gaps in terms of open data. And also now innovators can pick up these ideas, try to consume them, develop mobile apps, develop technologies that can be a platform for consumers. And then we can integrate these apps with the healthcare system. So if we don't have this digital ecosystem, it will be really difficult to integrate.
We have time for one more question, please.
Yeah, Ayub Kazim from HCT Dubai. My question to the panelists is with regards to how the technology will shape the healthcare sector to enhance UAE's position, especially when it comes to the healthcare tourism. UAE and especially Dubai is considered to be one of the global healthcare tourism hubs with tourism, air travel and tourism contributing around 30% of our GDP in Dubai. So how do you see that technology will enhance the UAE's position within 10 years from now?
Who would like to answer? Dr. Eric.
Really good question and really pertinent to what we're doing here and what we've seen over the last couple of years, and I've been in healthcare quite some time in the UAE, is a real desire to kind of showcase the UAE. We've built up physical infrastructure, which is excellent. You know, you can't get some of these facilities that we see anywhere else in the world, right? And it's in Dubai, it's in Abu Dhabi, it's in the Northern Emirates, and then enabled by a digital platform and most importantly, I guess, the people, right? We've trained a lot of our people. We've got a lot of institutes like the High College of Technology who are helping us to achieve that. When you showcase that to the world, and we've all had visitors over here, right? We've all seen, look, it's next door to Expo. We see how people interact with the UAE. And you add things like Al Hosn app, which is, I think it's amazing. Like, I think it does all the things that you want to do and a lot more. My kids keep telling me, oh, Dad, there's something on Al Hosn now that gives us like this thing that goes up and down, right? And we all see it, and it's brilliant to be part of that. And when you see that, and you know, I'm a great advocate. I'm not born in this country. I live in this country, and I'm very happy to be here because I like to be part of that, because I like to be part of something that's new and growing somewhere. And as Pure Health, we always say, well, the next really big step is, as was mentioned already, is longevity. How do we show to the world that we actually live longer, happier, healthier lives, using all the modern technology, but also using our physicians, our clinicians that we've trained or worked with for so long, and using this term ecosystem. And the United Arab Emirates, I think, is a great lead to that. And I think more of these sessions will really help to promote that. And that's what I feel when you combine that logistics in terms of the aviation, people come in there, and the first thing they see is a beautiful Al Hosn app. And I think Al Hosn, still don't know actually who's really behind it, but they're doing a great job in terms of incrementally increasing that engagement. And that's what people are looking for. They're saying, well, shouldn't really look at Google to say what's the best dermatologist. I should really come to me, right? And I should really be engaging with something like an app or the digital infrastructure that we have. And of course, there's problems around it, unstructured, structured data, but I think that's really where the future is. Thank you.
So this is a very good question as well. And I think one of the hurdles where for seeking healthcare becomes information portability. So as a patient, if I want to come to Dubai, because I feel that a particular treatment, I can have it with a path of least resistance better at Dubai, but I still want my care team back home to be able to access it. That's where the true nature of patient health records, being the property of the patient, not the facility and the physician, can play a part as well. So this data aggregation, so if I am a patient coming from the UK and I want to have some procedure done, I want to be able, for my care teams on both the ends of the pond, to be able to join the dots for me. And I then have the ownership of those records with me. So in the future, I'm able to take whatever happened in Dubai, whatever had happened in the UK, back to Japan, for example, for my next care. I think that democratization of patient data in the patient's pocket would help put more reassurance and confidence in the healthcare.
Dr. Osama, you wanted to add something?
Thank you very much for this question. I have a comment on the question before I answer. So I always see people saying that how technology can enable X. I think this is a question that is 10 years old, because we believe that now technology and even digital health is a digital economy by itself. It's create new markets by itself. It's not just an enabler. It has value by itself. So whatever you invest on it in terms of infrastructure or software or talented, you are creating an economy by itself. So now I want to answer the question. So if you talk about the medical tourism in UAE comparing with other countries, for sure we are not the cheapest. So the only angles that we can compete with are quality and experience. So we think that technology can focus more on experience and proving the quality. So even if you want to come, as you said, from UK, the journey itself from the start, where I should go. So there are, for example, 5 hospitals in UAE who can do this procedure. You can have comparison in terms of quality between doctors, between hospitals. So having this information handy to you, that should be good. So you can get the journey even before coming to UAE, booking your hotels, taking your journey, even your family if you are coming with you. So the whole thing should be really, really supported by technology, by, for example, providing an identification number for you, which can you use across the ecosystem, not only across the hospitals, but even with your tourist activities, with your visa, whatever. All this should be one journey. This is very important. even after you go back home, you need to even reconnect with your doctors, making sure that you're doing your rehabilitation in the right way. So making sure that the phase before coming to Dubai, when you are in Dubai or UAE, and then after you leave, all this should be one journey, one seamless journey.
Thank you very much all, and I think that we have to stop over here as we're running out of time. I would like to thank all of the panelists and also audience for the great discussion. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the last remark from Dr. Rahul about the ownership, about the agency over the data, because I'm a huge fan of something like this in education as well. So this is something where definitely the future will take us, hopefully. Thank you very much once more, and see you in 15 minutes here. Kim will give us a little bit more information about it.
Thank you all so much for attending this session, and thank you so much to the panelists. I wanted to give a special shout out to Dr. Osama, who joined us very, very last minute due to a previous cancellation. And I think you did an amazing job at such short notice, and thank you so much for your viewpoint. I want to invite all of you to please attend for some networking. There's coffee across the hallway. We have probably one of the very limited times in the HCT where we have industry representative, government representatives, as well as faculty members. So take the time, have a coffee together, discuss with each other what you would like to do in terms of applied research, startups, etc. So whilst you are making your way over for coffee, please let me introduce Dr. Gregory Blatch. He's our new Executive Dean, well, relatively new, Executive Dean of Health Sciences. You want to stand up there, Greg? So please take the time to speak with Dr. Greg, talk to him about his illustrious research career, and let's hope for some very exciting new applied research projects coming out after this session. Thank you so much. When you're coming back? 11:35.
appreciate it. Good evening. I think it's one of the great opportunities I had today to be with a group of panelists that are discussing the ecosystem, main challenges for the innovation, and also the way forward and opportunities to collaborate together. This session has still not It's a great pleasure to be here today to have a great panel discussion discussing Incubate and how
Okay, if you could take your seats, we'll be getting started. Good morning. We're going to get started with our second session this morning. And for those of you that have been here at the beginning, I'll repeat a couple things because we have some people joining new for this session in particular. So good morning and welcome to HCT's second annual Incubation Forum, here being hosted at the Dubai Exhibition Center on the Expo grounds. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and our President, Professor Dr. Abdul Latif Al-Shamsi, welcome to this very unique to HCT event. And it's unique globally because I don't think there's another event with a title called Incubation in it anywhere. And that is a unique HCT mashup, to use the words of the generation in front of us, the millennials. We have mashed together two words, innovation and incubation, into one word. And it makes sense because of the way HCT is operating and doing things in a very hybrid type model. And incubation itself is a hybrid model. For those of you that are with the session here on site, we do have the facilities available to us outside. We have a hospitality area. As well, I'd ask that everybody turn their cell phones on to silent or take your phone calls outside the session. Incubation has a very unique connotation in the sense that you can use the overword innovate all you want, but unless you convert that innovation into something, it just remains an innovation. The word incubation is often tied to startups, where you're incubating a new startup company from its inception to commercial success. But incubation also has its application in terms of prototyping, testing new products, as well as identifying and improving new processes. And so this unique mashup brings us here today for the second time to celebrate and to showcase what HCT is doing relative to taking innovative ideas, incubating them, and converting them into success. This session is focused on the education sector. And the education sector is not without its challenges. As we have all seen in the last 2 years, as much as the health sciences sector was under great stress, the education sector was equally under stress. And in fact, many cracks emerged in the education sector. Those cracks emerged because education had to move away from something very comfortable and traditional, in-class learning, to online learning. Now, online learning is not new. In fact, distance learning has been going on for the past 4 decades. Moving it to online, okay, it was just taking a different delivery mode. However, that was usually done at the postgraduate level. Now, a few institutions came along in the 80s and 90s that made it mainstream at the undergrad level. But to take it into the K-12 system was a whole new ballgame. Some were successful, some were not. I think parents were probably more stressed than the kids were. And the teachers themselves had to adapt very quickly. And so what today's session is going to bring out is how the emerging leaders in the education sector see things going forward from the lessons learned and what's going to have to happen to make the adjustments going forward. Now we've got some very unique research going on at HCT. To highlight 3 areas, amongst us we have Dr. Jackie Loughton, who is in our education faculty. And she has been studying reducing academic fatigue for the determined ones while they're learning. And that's a huge challenge. It's something that HCT takes to heart because we have adapted our education policies, our delivery methodologies to take into account the determined ones. And Dr. Jackie's work is having a significant impact on the modification to those. Now, I referenced something called the hybrid model. It seems like everybody is following HCT's lead these days and adopting the hybrid model of education, largely out of necessity. Some, I suspect the more traditional universities, will go back to their old ways and continue to believe that face-to-face is the only way to go. HCT is not going in that direction. HCT will continue along its path with hybrid education, a combination of on-campus and online learning. Now, in order to do that, you have to figure out what's going on. And Dr. Georgia, our Dean of our General Studies area at HCT, is leading the work in the area of the hybrid model in terms of preparing students for the workplace. Now, heaven forbid that we have to continue doing Zoom meetings. But there is a reality to that. And that presents a whole different change in how students learn and then take those skills into the workplace, because the workplace will continue to run with the hybrid model itself, even outside the education sector. Finally, Dr. Lana is doing work on education and literacy during times of change. Now, if you look at social media today, you could probably live in a world without vowels, because everything is getting reduced to letters that essentially represent 5 words. And that's changing a whole new perspective on literacy itself. I still love my books. I like to flip my pages. And interestingly enough, we're finding out that the millennials, first of all, they're going back to buying LPs to run on record players, huge demand for that, and also the library that they like to have. The Harry Potter books, okay, are not just electronic. They are hardcover books. And you're seeing this interesting tension developing. And that brings up the whole literacy issue. And HCT is doing research in there. So that highlights the work that HCT is doing in the education sector. I'd like to recognize Dr. Phil Quirk. He's our Executive Dean of the Faculty of Education. Alongside him, we have one of our IAC members, Sister Terry, from St. Mary's in Russell Hema, with us as well. The IACs are key to HCT, and it demonstrates, again, a unique aspect of incubation. Without our industry partners, there is no innovation, and there is no incubation, and hence no incubation. You've got to have that whole trio together. And I'd like to thank our industry partners here for participating, and enjoy the session. Dr. Marco, session number 2, over to you.
Thank you very much. So, dear colleagues, guests, welcome again to the second panel of the 2022 edition of the HT Incubation Forum with a special focus on education sector. Last year, during the inaugurate Incubation Forum, we hoped that the COVID pandemic would last for just a year, but that did not happen. And duration and extent of disruption additionally emphasized the role of innovation and expanded the scope of transformation within the education sector beyond digitization and edtech. And that was mostly the focus of our discussion last year. So today we are witnessing that learners are keen to get skilled for future jobs, but are not easily ready to spend time and money to the extent it was common before. New education models are arising, new players are getting onto the stage, and we have to find out where we are. Not only HCT, not only educators, but all of the stakeholders in the education process. So I have a pleasure today to host an amazing group of panelists to discuss about the present and future of innovation in the education sector. And I would like to invite you one by one. So first, Dr. Bruno Silva, Senior Solution Architect from Amazon Web Services. Dr. Bruno, please join us. Please. Dr. Bruno is an expert in research and technical computing. In his current role at AWS, he is establishing centers of digital innovation in world-leading higher education organizations. The centers are designed to help healthcare and education spin-outs innovate faster using the cloud. He is also a member of the UK Science and Technology Facilities Council E-Infrastructure Advisory Group. In his previous roles, he led the establishment of research computing services at the Francis Crick Institute at University College London. Bruno Silva holds PhD in computational physics from UCL and has keen interest in the reproducibility and sustainability of computation research, as well as addressing skills development and training challenges in the field. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Bruno. Our next panelist is Mr. Luai Mikawi, EdTech Product Lead from Injazat. Welcome, Dr. Luai, and please just briefly introduce yourself. Yes, please.
Yeah, first of all, I'm Luai without doctor.
Luai.
In the future, I'll
Sorry.
be a doctor. No worries. I've been in the application sector for the past 17 years. For the past 8 years, I've been in the education EdTech sector here in the UAE. So I managed one of the best implementation for Abu Dhabi SIS systems. I'm a program manager and a product lead at Injazat Data Systems. And I'm leading currently one of the leading partners in Injazat for the EdTech sector. I'm a holder of master degree in IT management from AOS and computer science from
Thank you, Mr. Luai. Our next panelist, I hope she joins us, Ms. Hajar Al-Ansari. Please come. She is communication manager at Knowledge and Human Development Authority, KHDA. Ms. Hajar Al-Ansari is at the forefront of EdTech and communications at Dubai KHDA. Hajar works on shaping KHDA community outreach and engages in creating meaningful opportunities to create the future of education. Transforming the potential of new technology into real-life applications, Hajar collaborates with tech startups as part of Dubai Future Accelerators program. Her diverse expertise in communications, partnership development, and creative prototyping has seen her contribute towards major projects that have impacted students across Dubai. Thank you for joining us today. Our next panelist is Dr. Christina Tinakap, Head of Quality at Aleph Education. Tinakap is Head of Quality for Aleph Education. Prior to joining Aleph, she worked as a digital development expert for international publishers including Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, Pearson, and UNDP. Tina's roles have included digital content development, international R&D, LMS and metadata engine development, and content strategies for English language learners. She has also taught at both K6 and university levels. Tina holds a doctorate in e-learning from the University of Central Florida, where she researched learner engagement and success factors in first-person played educational games. Her areas of specialization include digital publishing, UDL frameworks for digital and blended learning, and the development of digital infrastructure in international schools. So, welcome, Tina. Nice to have you here. And last but not least, and you saw him already, Dr. Alex Zakovic, Chief Academic Officer from Higher Colleges of Technology. Dr. Alex leads academic sector at HCT, that is the UAE's leading applied education institution, and he is HCT is a founder of the Global Applied Education Network. Dr. Alex is responsible for the delivery of all of the HT academic programs and applied research and entrepreneurship activities across the UAE. Previously, he was the Vice President of Corporate Development, Applied Research and International at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, SAIT, in Calgary, Canada. He was the founding director of SAIT's Applied Research and Innovation Services, focused on meeting the industry needs, which resulted in SAIT becoming the #1 ranked college in Canada for applied research in 2013. Alex was also Vice President of Production and Product Development at Uniplus Films Canada, a global leader in packaging. He has a PhD in Mechanical Engineering from McMaster University, and he is a member of the Board of Directors of Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton and the Materials Commission of the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation. Welcome, Dr. Alex. So, as mentioned before, we are focusing on innovation in particular sector all across our forum, and let's start from a very generic question. How do you foresee that people will learn in future? Dr. Alex, can you start?
I think learning is a natural characteristics of humans, and I don't think people themselves are going to change the fact that they are curious and want to learn and want to understand. What will evolve over time, as it has in all cases, is to use a very industrial term, the channels and modes that information and knowledge will come to us. If you start at a very basic level, a child learns whether something is hot or cold by touching. A child starts to form their ability to speak based on the guidance from their parents in the household. There's different modes, different channels that get you that. One is a sensory one is more of a rote listening type approach. Then you have this rapid availability of information. Whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise, it's information nonetheless. And people start to synthesize and learn through those other various channels, those modes and media as they come along. So basically, humans will continue to learn because they're curious. They'll continue to learn because it's a method of survival. But how that information arrives to them is going to come in a variety of different forms going forward.
Thank you very much. Tina?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, I guess it comes down to utility. And to give you kind of an analogy that I like to use, there's so much available right now, from MOOCs to online learning, from higher education to vocational, that one of the challenges for students and for lifelong learners is in filtering what's out there. My analogy I use is actually very silly. It's a shopping app. So if I use a shopping app, and I do, it keeps track of what age my kids are, what sizes they wear, what brands I've bought for them in the past, what I have returned. And so what it presents to me is not the 11,000 things that came in this week from all over the world. It is what is most likely to be most relevant to me right now. And that idea of taking information, this idea of this big data kind of maelstrom that circles us all in the era of the modern technology world, and being able to apply it to refine what you want, what's most relevant and most useful to you at this minute, I think that's the key to education in the future. And when I say big data, I don't necessarily mean your skills alone. Your skills are one thing, but the things that make up you as a learner have to do with much less tangible things like grit, motivation, skill sets, social emotional kinds of profiles, the things that I fear. Like, for example, when I was in school, I did not do very well with math, and so that scared me for a very long time. I have a lot in common with many young learners in that way. And so getting past that fear is a part of how good learning kind of targets how you cater to your weaknesses, how you cater to your strengths, and gives you the utility to be able to select the thing that makes most sense for you at the moment, out of all the available options.
I have to add the question to your elaboration
Which
because I
shopping
like
app?
it. No, I liked it so much. Shopping app basically captures what you like. How do you see that the app, let's call it app, process, methodology, as you wish, would capture what challenges you or what scares you? As you mentioned, you were scared of math, but you would need math.
So it is a little more complicated than a shopping app. You're absolutely right. But one of the things that good apps do nowadays, and what most of the apps on the phones of today's college students would do, is get to know you, your history. So the things that you have liked, and it could be as interesting or as uninteresting as a specific brand, but it could also be, of all the courses that you've taken, which one resonated with you most? Which professor did you click with the most? And then drilling down into the how and why. If you have enough big data, in theory, you know about that professor, you know how they teach, you know their approach to learning and why it clicked with that particular student. It could also be everyone loves an online quiz. But one of the things that a lot of apps ask you these days, if you look at, for example, health history in health apps, it is a very simple list of let's get to know the most important elements that we're going to need to know to cater to you properly. And that would also apply to education. So my interests, my skills, but also kind of my history of learning and going down into kind of the things that scare you. Where are your aspirations? So what are my goals for 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And if you're able to properly capture that data, and I think data transparency is a big part of this because it's a ton of data to hold on someone. If you're able to properly capture and connect that to learning, then I think you've really got something, and you've got something that has the capacity to, instead of giving me the 11,000 options out there, gives me the 1 or 2 or 3 choices that might be tailored to me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jack.
Here's the answers.
Okay. So when we often think about the future of education, we think about the things that will change in 5 years or in 10 years. Whether it's about the tools, delivery, content, or the whole ecosystem, all of them. However, it is as important to also think of the things that will never change. And with these things, here comes these soft skills, the importance of well-being in our learners' lives, and how important it is to be perseverant, and also, as Dr. Alex mentioned, the importance of curiosity and how learning naturally happens. We've been doing a study, which is the Dubai Wellbeing Census, for 5 years, and it is a study that measures the well-being of the educational community here in Dubai. So we measure how students are happy, whether they're happy at school or not, whether they are having healthy sleeping habits, healthy breakfast, and we saw the importance and interconnection of that and their academics. And recent results showed us how important it is to focus on these elements and these aspects for them to be able to lead a future that's peace-driven and also focus on making change and also focusing on learning how to learn, not only focusing on academics and the other, let's say, usual structure when it comes to learning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Louis.
Well, I must agree with you guys. Currently, in our era, let's say, data is the gold of this era, and I believe that it's going to be the gold for the future also. So students and learners and the education sector in whole needs to depend on the data now, and how this data that roaming all around us, as mentioned Dr. Christina, how they can use it in their future. So currently we see that our children are exposed to a huge amount of data, but I think it's on our shoulders to filter this data and to start giving them a useful information out of this data. There's a lot of misleading data. There's a lot of wrong data.
Speak openly about this, especially certain people from Silicon Valley. I'll just leave it like that, where they actively talk about bypassing higher education altogether. in going straight into skills learning to basically be useful in the jobs market, right? Or to be entrepreneurial, or to be this and that. And getting away from all of that higher education environment. I personally feel that's a bit of an extreme view. I think there's also lots of value that comes from delivery in a sort of classical environment, a traditional environment of higher education.